Hello Bio20 and welcome to our video on the phosphorus cycle. So today we're going to talk about the highlights of the phosphorus cycle and things that are impacts from humans and what is all about phosphorus. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how important phosphorus is. Now, it's available in limited quantities. It's found concentrated in us because it's part of our DNA. Okay, so phosphates make up the backbone of our DNA. And you may not remember that back from chapter 6 when we talked about nucleic acids and we talked about how there is a phosphate, a sugar, and a nitrogenous base. Now that phosphate is found in there, it's the structure. Also, ATP also has phosphate, adenosine triphosphate. So it's a really key important part for the energy that is made in our body. Now, another major component of our bones and teeth is phosphorus. So we need phosphorus. It's really, really, really essential. But unlike carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur, phosphorus is not found up in the atmosphere. So it's not in the air we breathe. Carbon is, nitrogen is, sulfur is, it's up there. But phosphorus is not. The only place we can find phosphorus is in the soil, the water, and then weathering gradually releases any sort of phosphorus trapped in rocks. So that's how we find it sometimes in water too, is as water runs over the rocks, it picks up the phosphorus as it travels to a new source. How do animals obtain phosphorus? Well, they consume foods that have phosphorus in it. So if we are eating another animal, that animal has phosphorus. Or if that animal is eating something else that has phosphorus, we can consume phosphorus that way. Things like milk, grain, and meats have phosphorus in it. Producers like plants and algae can use phosphorus. But again, it has to be in a usable form, just like nitrates had to be in that way, sulfates had to be in that way, phosphates are what needs to be in the usable form, and it's easily dissolved in water. You may find phosphates in things like fertilizer, so plants can get phosphates from fertilizer. They also get nitrogen from fertilizer and potassium from fertilizer. So that's one of the ways that we can put in phosphorus into our plants and into the algae. Now, this presents a problem. The impact side of the story. So phosphorus isn't in the atmosphere, it's in our lakes, it's in our water, it's in our rocks, it's in our soils. However, we need to be able to get it into our plants so that the animals that eat the plants also can get phosphorus. This is where it presents a problem. Most farms use some sort of fertilizer. So the growth of algae in aquatic ecosystem is very limited by available nutrients. So if you think of a body of water, you're going to have algae. Algae is that green substance that kind of coats the top. Now, farmers will use fertilizers on their plants, on their crops, because they want them to grow healthy, strong, so that they can harvest them, sell them, or use them for cattle to eat the crops. Now, when it rains, that whole idea of fertilizer gets carried away from a farm and it gets carried into the nearest water system. This causes then overgrowth of algae because algae really likes phosphates. It also really likes nitrogen. So this overgrowth of algae is called an algal bloom, and this produces produces a large amount of organic matter, and which the decomposers break down. So algae sits on the surface, it utilizes up oxygen in the water, and then it also breaks down and decomposers eat this, okay? The key point here though is as algae grows across the surface of the water, it's using up the oxygen found in the water. Now, this will start to result in the death of fish and other aquatic life because there's less oxygen. The reason why there's less oxygen as well is because that algal bloom coats the surface of the water. Therefore, no sunlight can get through the water to help the plants do photosynthesis to release that oxygen. So what ends up happening is the lack of oxygen results in the death of fish and other aquatic life. As these things die, the decomposers eat them up using more oxygen, causing the water to become hypoxic. Hypoxic means lack of oxygen present. We call this an oxidative stress, meaning there's not enough oxygen within the water to sustain life, which is a huge, huge problem. Eventually, we can have what's called a dead lake or a dead zone, meaning it's lacking enough oxygen that nothing can grow there. The process of the algal blooms growing on top of the lake is called eutrophication. So in the picture here, I have a picture of the lake in Ontario that shows an algal bloom on one side because it was exposed to high levels of phosphate. So that's why it looks so murky and covered in a green substance. So what you're going to do is you're going to watch a bunch of videos on eutrophication and answer some questions about it, because this is a large impact that humans have on our lakes currently, and it is getting worse as global warming is occurring. So if you have any questions, please let me know.